They took everything from him, his home, his family, his heart, but what they didn't know was that they'd left behind one last unbreakable bond. You won't believe how this abandoned cat found his way back to love. Meet Oliver, a cat who once had it all, a cozy home, a loving owner, and a life filled with warmth. But in a blink, it all vanished. His owner, an elderly woman named Grace, passed away suddenly, leaving Oliver alone in an empty house. As the door shut for the last time, Oliver was left to fend for himself, confused, alone. He didn't understand why the woman who fed him every day wasn't coming back. Soon, the house was filled with strangers, taking away everything that was once familiar to him. And before long, Oliver found himself placed into a cold metal cage in a shelter, the warmth of his home replaced by the chilling reality of abandonment. At the shelter, Oliver waited and waited. Days turned into weeks. The once lively and hopeful cat now spent his time curled up in the corner of his cage, too heartbroken to even care when someone walked by. Other cats came and left, adopted into loving homes, but no one seemed to want an older, less cute cat like Oliver. To the world, he was just another face in the crowd, a cat with no story worth hearing. But they were wrong. They didn't know the fierce love he once gave, the loyalty he held. Oliver had a heart full of love, but no one to give it to. But just when Oliver had given up hope, someone changed everything. Enter Emily. She had just lost her own beloved pet and wasn't sure she was ready to open her heart again. Still, something urged her to visit the shelter that day. She walked past all the cages, stopping in front of Oliver's. Their eyes met. There was something in his gaze, something she understood too well. The grief, the longing, the loneliness. She didn't see an old cat. She saw a soul waiting to be loved again, and in that moment, she knew. Emily couldn't walk away. She adopted Oliver that day, and when they left the shelter, something in Oliver seemed to change. It was like he could sense he wasn't going back to an empty cage. He had found a new family, a new hope. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. At first, Oliver struggled to adapt. The new smells, the new sounds, they weren't the same as his old life. He'd sit by the door for hours, waiting for Grace to walk through. And Emily? She was patient, but her heart broke watching Oliver cling to a past that was never coming back. Days passed, and just when Emily thought Oliver might never come out of his shell, something beautiful happened. For the first time, Oliver let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he had found love again, and from that moment on, their bond grew stronger. Oliver was no longer the sad, lonely cat from the shelter. He had become Emily's constant companion, reminding her every day that even in the darkest times, love could find you when you least expect it. Oliver and Emily healed each other. In the quiet moments, when the house felt too empty and the world too big, they found comfort in knowing they weren't alone. For Oliver, who had once lost everything, the world had become warm again. And for Emily, who thought she couldn't love again, Oliver had shown her that the heart always has room for one more. Sometimes love isn't about who you lose, but about who you find next.